Hello and welcome to another episode of Steel First Speaks. This is the Put Me in Coach series where I sit down with fab coaches and let them show off their stuff and try and win you over to the idea that you, regular fab player, might need some coaching to help you get better at talking. I'm joined today by Ben Dodd from New Zealand. Do you want to say hello, Ben, and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm a fab player and coach, and yeah, I can do a full blown introduction, but I think I'll leave it at that.
Well, have people heard of you? I mean, that's the first question. I think you have won bits. You've helped other people win some bits.
Yeah, I've worked with a couple clients, here and there, and I recently did quite well at the Melbourne Calling. So that was cool. Managed to take home the old Crown of Providence, first place. But as a coach, uh, I don't think that that's too relevant.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
I was doing coaching before that, and I focus more on the the way we approach the game rather than the specific play lines that we're trying to make.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of my mindset and where I'm at with it.
Yeah, sounds very interesting. I mean, as a lot of coaches will help you get better at a specific deck or get you better for a specific tournament. You're kind of saying that your strategy is actually just let's get into you as a player and what you're doing regular life.
What you care about, why you want to play, and how to, just kind of achieving those goals or working towards them in a way that's, you know, good for you.
Man, okay. And I guess just before we dive into it, so if people are listening to this and they want to get in contact with you, like what's the best way? What's the best mediums?
Yeah, just reach me on Discord.
Going to go onto any of the discords where there's fab people, like the purple discord and places like that, and you can look for Redodd, Redodd. But anyway, that's how you find Ben. And let's sort of refocus. So that's your coaching style. So I guess the question that I like to ask then is how do you start with someone then? So if I come to you and I'm like, look, I'm a semi-washed fab player. I've been playing 2020. I won some RTNs in 2021, and I have done well. I mean, day twos of callings, day twos of never actually any specific achievements. Like, what is your approach then? So I come to you, candidate.
Well, we can jump into that, but it's very collaborative.
Hmm?
I do my first coaching session free, as long as you're engaging in other coaching sessions afterwards. It's just free, open, get to know each other, and kind of lay out the groundwork for who you are, what you care about, why you're here, what your goals are. And then from there, we can start working together to improve the way that we think about the game and the way that we sit down at the table to play, and kind of all of the stuff that goes into playing Flesh and Blood that isn't what deck do I play, how do I block, right? It's like all of that stuff. Obviously, it all flows, the macro and the micro interweave, and you
Yeah.
incorporate it all together. But that's how it goes. So first, I would like to know your name, if
Finbar.
you're alright with that.
Yeah, Finbar. That is the name.
Finbar?
Yeah.
All right. So I can refer to you, by name rather than just Steel Fur.
Lots of people
So I'm
do.
Ben.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you.
meet you, Ben.
Um, and I just wanted to get to know you, and kind of talk about how you came into Fab. So you said you've been playing for a while. Like, how did that journey start?
Well, I had a dead card game, Legend of the Five Rings LCG, and that died a death because the company didn't love it that much. But ultimately, I was bored and looking for something to do, and a friend of mine that I played that game why didn't you come and do this with us? And lots of people I knew from that game, you know, got into this one, and it just became a hobby. And COVID helped because I had no girlfriend, no job. Well, I had a job, but hard to get a lot of. I had too much free time, so I ended up. Let's say enough that I can't remember not playing Fab. Put it that way.
A
Yeah.
common story.
Yeah.
We've heard that one a couple of times. And I guess what's made you stick with it? Like what have you enjoyed from it, and what value has like Fab given you? You know, why are you sitting here, you know, filming YouTube videos about it and talking to me about it?
That's a multi-layered question. I mean, the YouTube videos are. I work as a journalist. I'm a public speaker, trade, and an industry expert. Job that I do. So broadcasting, analyzing is just my bread and butter, and I do it in private life. And the other part of it is that I worked in PR for 7 years. I worked with lots of very good journalists, and the thing that I believe every company needs is people that do it and engage with it critically and say what it's. My ethos has been to sort of echo that. Maybe it's a bit silly to apply that sort of ethos to all gaming companies. People I know used to bring it to. I feel like as LSS grows bigger, it becomes more important to have an engaged creation, a community that's not afraid to out and also give it praise at the same time. So that's content creation, but as a player, it was. I mean, I've always enjoyed the community of hard games. You know, having people who have a shared language and understanding of
Yeah.
the world who group together in a casual social setting. You know, to be relaxed and share this common language. And then competitively, those shots of adrenaline, the feeling of success, and achievement when you manage to win games against good, is definitely a driver. A little bit of ego in terms of, hey, I did quite well at and then just mechanically, I mean, the playing card games, playing board games speaks to my brain in a way that's very to difficult to communicate to people who don't share that same experience. See a puzzle, you solve a puzzle, it feels.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, that's I really appreciate your way with words.
Like I do this for a living. Not on YouTube, but
Yeah, nice. So just solving those puzzles, playing games with people, and then it seems also like from what you're saying, the YouTube thing for you is almost you want to provide value back in some way.
yeah.
It's like you want to help the game improve.
It's a way of participating in the community on a mass scale and applying the critical analytical skills that I've developed in my life to helping a hobby improve. Sometimes good, sometimes.
And I guess tapping down into that like puzzle solving side of it. What do you want to improve on? Like, how can I help you enjoy Fab more?
So there's been I think there's a few things that go on in Fab that I'm not entirely happy with. And people who follow my channel will know that I've kind of been rethinking my approach to callings and things like that, where I'm not really prepared, right? Because there's a difference when you go to a tournament really prepared and you go to one not prepared. Now, part of me says I'd like to get better at deciding which tournaments I'm going to prepare for and allocating the time to prepare for them, right? But, I don't know about you, but I have a brain that likes to hyperfixate on different problems and challenges. And sometimes the event's coming around and my brain is off solving, writing and doing something, so I don't prepare for it properly. But you know, so the one goal is to obviously get into a place where I can compare competitively, I can compete and do better than I have before. And the other part of my goal is learning how to let that go completely for the tournaments where I know that that's not going to happen. And I say that at the Calling Birmingham last year, I succeeded, and I played side events all weekend. I played 7 or 8 different formats. I borrowed decks that I'd never played before, and I just had an absolute blast. Did I win anything? Well, I got enough tickets to open 2 alpha packs and pulled the cold foil heartbone strapping and sold it for 300 quid. So even when I lost, I still won. And then I contrast that with my Worlds Barcelona experience, where I went to the Calling, got a slightly above average Teklo deck, played, grounded out, made day 2, but I had not enough practice with the draft at all to be playing day 2. And I went from sealed, which you can do sealed without huge amounts of practice. That's kind of the whole. Where I went 6-2 into going 1-4 in the draft, and I said to myself afterwards, if I had been realistic, sensible about my own expectations, I would have done well on day 1. Said, "Cool, that was fun, but I'm not ready for the draft." And then after I drafted badly and lost a game, I dropped then, rather than playing another draft and another 5 rounds just to remember that I'm not prepared for the right. And the amount of fun I could have had in side events at that time, is the cost benefit analysis sort of coming against it. So that was thing. So I actually left that event feeling more frustrated than I had at Birmingham, because I'd set this grindstone around my neck to do better when I had no business doing better, and I wasn't going to unless I got very, very lucky. So those are kind of I think the 2 main challenges. The one is trying to be competitive in that. The other challenge is learning how to let go to create.
Yeah, bit of a yin and yang, but torn in 2 directions.
I think unless you can commit fully to the game as a competitive hobby 24/7, I think you have to have that. I struggle with it. If you get a win or 2, it's the mouse with the cheese. You're like, ooh, I'm good at this format. I could potentially, I'm good at sealed. Maybe I could potentially do something here. Or if I win 1 or 2 more games, I might get 100 quid cash, and you end up just tanking your elo, right? I mean, oh.
How were the losses during day 2? Like, how did they compare emotionally to the losses during day 1 there? Because you said you enjoyed day 1, and you were playing, and you win some, lose some, but you got on a good record. You're feeling good. You grinded out. You're playing to good ability, and sounds like you enjoyed that, and you're relishing in that competitive environment. Did losing during day 1 have the same emotional response, or a different one to your experience of day 2?
Interesting question. I think I would say that the losses during day 1, because it was steel and because I expected, didn't really have a massive emotional impact. So if we think about it, my first loss was in round 4, and I was kind of on a good streak, but I was like, okay, so this is kind of where the streak ends. Fair enough, I haven't played round. And then I kept winning, and then I lost again in the last round, or second loss. And at that point, I was on a good streak, so I was emotionally invested in the win. But I was still kind of, I think, in the mindset of, what am I doing in this? Like, it's going to be fine, even though I don't. It's just sealed, right? And then when you make the second day, and suddenly there's money on the table, and I've done this well, I could do well again. And also, like, because if I make day 2 of an event, I don't stay up as late. I don't. So I've taken myself home earlier that evening to sleep and make sure I'm giving myself the best chance. So you've already sacrificed quite a lot from the trip, right? In terms of drinking with your mates and staying out late to be on that day 2. And then when you don't win, it just feels more impactful because you're losing potential money. And also you're kind of like tied into this idea of I did well on day one, so I'm a good player, so I could do well. I think is hard to like.
Mm. Interesting. I guess one other thing I want to understand the comparison between is your enjoyment of playing competitively and your enjoyment of going to the calling with no expectations and just having a bit of fun on the side events and cracking some packs and hanging out with your mates. And you like both of these. And I guess in what ways do you like, how do those feelings of enjoyment compare, and what do those different things mean to you?
So I mean, the thing is, if you just rock up to a calling and you're playing side events, and you're hanging out with your mates, that's just a fun weekend away with the boys, right? Or the girl, whoever you go with. The people. There's no pressure. It's just play whatever formats you want, experiment. Do well in some side events. Don't have a bit of fun, and I feel like when you do that, you really squeeze every drop out of it. And because anytime anyone's like, "Oh, do you want to do that?" It's either no because I'm already playing in a side event, or it's yeah, sure, let's just head, right? You don't have that massive commitment, big event hanging over to get you, permanently engaged in it, having to consider how everything you do affect readiness to play in that event, right? So that's casual. I mean, casual is just easy. Rock up and it's like you go to a game convention, having games, and chatting and eating good food and supporting your friends. Competitively, it's just so pleasant to prepare to be good at something and then to get the payoff of being good. The reason we play games is that it's possible to get that feeling of payoff from something that doesn't take all of your life. Not like a promotion at work, like a little promotion. You worked really hard, and here you go, have your gold star. So
Yeah.
like that's a box tick in the brain. That's serotonin level. Like it's purely chemical. I practice with this deck. I go. I beat good players. It feels good. You can't give it up because it's the best feeling when it works. It's
Mm.
all I can think of to explain it. Like I would never
Yeah.
not want to be a competitive player some of the time because I can't
Yeah.
get that. I can't get that feeling.
That the
Just yeah,
edge, the edge of the tournament,
that's spice. When you've practiced the deck 100 times and you take it and you see the lines and people are presenting problems to you and you know exactly how to solve them and every matchup and goes exactly as you'd expect. And then even if you lose, still knew that you did exactly what you needed to do. Yeah, it just lines up.
that mastery, right? You enjoy the knowing what you're doing is the enjoyment.
In all my life, I value the person who is expert, who refines a skill, and then
All right. I'm gonna put a bookmark next to this topic, and I think we're gonna come back to it because it seems important, you're right, for you as a fair player. But we might dance around some other stuff for a bit and then come back to this. Is that good with you?
yeah, it's perfect.
Brilliant. So if we're now going to delve into just, trying to play well, right? Sitting down, trying to play a good game. What are you best at? What is your greatest strength as a player, right?
Um, I would say my greatest strength is just ability to. Like, I mean, I've playing aggro decks and things like that for years and things. Show me a hand, I will find the best damage very, very quick. and from that I will start to unpack and figure out
The
cards I
the math.
what cards I can't lose, what cards I need to keep for later, cards I can block with. Finding that line does not like my turns do not take as long.
Mm.
For better or worse. I see the line pretty clearly.
Why do you think that is?
There's not that many data points when it comes to a hand of fab cards. You've got your 5 cards, you've got potential cards your opponents could have that disrupt hands. You've got kind of like its posture in terms they look like they need, how are they blocking? Not actually that much data track in a specific moment. There's the broader
You're
like
you're
better of
comfortable with that, and
yeah.
you're used to dealing with lots of variables.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. I mean, there's the broader metadata of what have they got left in their deck and all this stuff, which I'm not as good at in terms of where my pitch
Mhm.
do that as well. But in the specific turn to turn, what's going on, like, find it very easy to read the language. Optimize.
All right. And then as a, obviously the opposite of that, what do you think, trips you up the most? What do you think causes you to lose games you shouldn't? What's holding you back from playing to your best ability?
I think I'm sloppy as hell, to be honest. Like missed triggers,
Mm.
not knowing what phase we're in. Like in Worlds, I lost a point of damage on my Teklo armor block because I just played the Evo in the wrong phase, and my opponent was like, "Are you doing it this phase?" And I said yes. And he was like, "Okay, cool. It comes, and you take one more hit." you know. So I think I'm still quite sloppy. I think I've been caught out
Mm.
multiple times across multiple not correctly identifying the phase, not making sure I were communicating properly, you know, saying I'd take damage I hadn't really analyzed. All this kind of thing.
Like the little mistakes where it's like, well, I should, I know what I'm supposed to do, but
Yeah, but I
I'm
don't
not quite
I don't do
doing
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It adds up. Those little mistakes do add up.
In For that issue specifically, right, where it's not a knowledge issue, right? You're good at thinking what the right play is, but it's like some of these sloppy errors, some of these little, oh, I just didn't think about that. Right, that's more of an issue of awareness in being aware of what's on the board, the game state, following your, layers properly, all of these details. There's several things we could work on together to build more of a practice around awareness as you play. Um, so these are things that aren't like playing reps of your deck 100 times, but is more like some examples would be dealing with distractions as you play. So if you, I guess simplest example would be you are tilted, right? You have a negative emotional state. You're going to play sloppier than you would otherwise. Um, is that something that you struggle with, or you've encountered as you play, or not as much?
No, 100%. Everyone gets tilted. Your opponent oakenolds you a fuse 3 times. Kind of see yourself into the hole. I wouldn't say I struggle with it like massively. Like I know some people who
Yeah,
have struggled with it quite a lot, but it's definitely on the radar. Um,
it's relevant,
yeah, exactly.
but not a specific issue. Okay.
I would say it is an issue, but I wouldn't say that it's like it's not happening every single time I sit down to play Fab, or even every time. But it's definitely something that does crop up. But distraction is
Okay.
definitely like if I have a huge judge call, getting back into the game after that is nightmare. You know,
Mm,
stuff like that.
trying to refocus back in.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite
So
tricky.
mm. Okay, well, if you're interested, we could go over some like focusing exercises or some ways. Um, one thing you can do is like a pre-game ritual, right? So it's like something that obviously depends on the person, but could be hand posture or counting to 10 in your head, even something as simple as that. A little breathing exercise, and just something that you, every time you sit down to play, you perform, and to help you get in, okay, this is where I am before I play. And then you're more zoned in and less likely to make these silly mistakes. Um, and then that can also be helpful if you've got a judge call, your attention is distracted, there's all this other stuff going on, and you need to refocus back into the game. Um, that's obviously, some people really like that, and it just doesn't vibe for some people. What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I mean, I could potentially try that. I think it could.
I'm getting the vibe that you're not excited by it. So I'm gonna make the judgment call that we're gonna skip that.
No, but I mean, the thing is, will I remember to do it? Right? It's the sort of thing
Mm,
that could probably be quite useful. And in my life, I've done Tai Chi and I've done meditation. I'm aware of the act of consciously being mindful of situation and fully engaging in the situation that you find yourself in. It's just, do you remember to do it in a crowded room full of people? I just don't know. Because maybe
mm.
I'm already too distracted by everything to remember to be mindful of the situation that I'm.
One thing I wanted to ask you is, where would you put yourself as far as organized versus disorganized in the way you are as a person?
Well, you can't see my desk. Um, I think the majority of the time I tend to disorder. Sometimes I can.
Yeah, and your thought processes, I get a bit, or
Yeah, they can be. Yeah, they can be disorganized. I have dyspraxia. Yeah, I would say I tend towards disorder unless I really have to be organized.
all right. Well, thank you for sharing all this with me. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, I'm I'm thinking we should go back to what you were talking about before, with that kind of split between wanting to succeed competitively and not preparing, or it not fitting into your life,
Yeah.
and you also wanting to enjoy fab without any of that pressure. Um, this isn't to say that you should pick one of those, but if you had to pick one, which would you lean towards?
In a scenario where I have like less time for, I'd
Mm.
probably just see myself toning down the frequency. Like, I'd probably still try and get to a weekly armory. Actually, I'd probably still try and factor in a big tournament every now and then. The energy, fantastic. I think it would be the first thing to go.
When when has playing competitively been the most rewarding for you? What does that look like?
That's interesting. Because times when I've won the most haven't necessarily been the most, because ultimately I'm not a deck builder. There are people who are good at that. I fully embrace the net deck. or I scope out what people are playing, and I play the good deck. I don't get into the weeds and this card is better than that. I don't have the energy or the time for it. I did. It doesn't happen, right? So, you
Yeah.
know, obviously I'm always at a slight competitive disadvantage because people building the best decks are going to be the ones winning. And I do get frustrated by the fact that I can't dig deep to find the ability to like tweak decks the way that some people do. Um, so, and the reason I say that in terms of the context is that the times when I say I've won the most have been playing net decks. That's just, but I think genuinely times that I found it the most satisfying are the times when I've had, even acknowledging the fact that I don't have the brain power, the time, or the energy to build decks like test as much as some people, but still, when I had a crew of people around me that were working towards, felt quite. I mean, ultimately, it's hard to have those people around when you're working as, but it did still feel good to be part of that mission, even though you yourself were not the person.
Mm. So to me, it sounds like the work is more rewarding to you in some ways than the result.
If I got the result, it would be great, but I don't expect it. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe that's part of the problem. I don't expect to win a calling or anything like that, because I don't feel like I put in enough work beforehand to justify victory, even if I got it. So that's kind of where it comes from. Like, I know if I play 20 games of Fi, I can Pro Tour probably day two. I know I grow, and I net deck all the time, and I'm quite good at taking a good deck and winning, and having a positive score and making the second day of a tournament with it. That's fine.
Obviously, you are not actively seeking coaching in your fab life, right? But you're interested in it, doing YouTube series, etc. But if you were wanting a coach, right? What would you want them for?
As you said, I'm not actively seeking a coach because I set my own engagement with the hobby and know how much time I have available for it, and the things that I think if I was to look for as an individual doing this, just trying to shed light on that area of the hobby as it grows. I think mostly the main thing for me would be someone who's not like afraid to call me out on my bullshit. Like if I'm not putting in the work to prepare for an event and I keep saying, "Oh, I would like to do well," I don't mind being called out on it. I think if I'm, you know,
Mm.
if there are places where I'm struggling because it's genuinely me not making the right decision, that would be the thing I'd prioritize. Call me out on that and push me to. Um,
It sounds like you'd almost want like a schedule, like you have to show up to training, because you said you wanted to practice for the tournament, so show up and we're gonna work on it.
Maybe, I mean, let's face it, the things that I do, like my raiding and WoW and stuff like that, it is all on a schedule. It is all show up on Saturday night because there's 20 other people who want you to come. But if there weren't 19 other people who were also there waiting for the raid to start, would I be there consistently? I don't know. I don't know. It's easy to block time in your schedule, really.
Mm.
But if it's just free form and stuff like that, it's easy to get distracted.
Yeah, I guess because then you're talking about how some of the things that you really enjoy is kind of like that feeling of like working with people and preparing for a tournament with people.
Yeah.
But there's like you can only put in so much time, and so that disparity can make it difficult.
Yeah.
So I guess a coaching relationship I could see working for you is where they're there to put time into prepping for the tournament with you, once a week, and then you have that place and that environment to go to where it's like, okay, this is like a tournament prep zone, and you get that same reward um, without, kind of on demand.
Yeah. It's the rich man solution to
Yeah,
having a testing team is to pay someone to be your testing team, I guess. When you're time poor but you have a bit of cash to solve it, I guess. Yeah. No, I mean
yeah, and
that could be a definite solution to the issue. If I decide that it's a one to solve.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and if it's an issue you want to put your money into solving, which it may or may not be, um, I I'm fully on board with you just playing side events. I think that's a great thing to do, and a lot of a lot of competitive play. It's easy to get caught up in the win and the loss and the tension of it. Um,
Trying to have fun playing.
I think it's very admirable to just say, you know what, I'm not prepared and I don't care.
And that's something
But
I'm trying to appreciate more.
yeah, so I think for you, it's like the way I see a coach working for you, right? If I was to work with you over the next, while continuing on from this, would be if you decide that I do want to play competitively, I want to give it a shot, I want to, and actually put the effort in and see how rewarding that is, solve these puzzles that I love solving. And then I have this outside scaffolding that I can work through with the coach to fix that problem that I have.
Okay. I think it's a very interesting sort of way to approach coaching. Because you say there's lots of coaches that focus on mechanics and making you a better player, but it seems like your ethos actually is about trying to figure out what's making the brain tick of the.
Yeah. I think the way we engage is very important, and that's going to dictate how valuable it is to you
Yeah.
and how much you get back out of it. And also, if you really want to do well, how well you do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um. Okay. Well, I think this has all been very, very interesting. I think it is a very good snapshot of your coaching style. To sort of, as you say, I mean, you're not. I think one of the things I've enjoyed about this is you're not engaging lightly with me as a person to just try and make me a better fab player, applying the same rote formula of, well, you need to get better at pitch stacking. Like, you're engaging with me cerebrally as a person to try and ascertain psychologically why I am deriving certain amounts of pleasure from different parts of the game. And that's quite, I think that's actually something that appeals to a lot of people, as a method of actually teaching them to be better people, not well, better people, but better.
Have a better being a better fab player for yourself rather than being a better fab player to win.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a whole narrative of how we engage with them in a way that makes them as rewarding as fulfilling as possible. And we don't always realize how to do that in our own selves. That gap between the reality of we perceive about ourselves and the reality that actually functioning living in. All right, well, maybe we'll start
Um,
to wrap up, but I think people
yeah,
who are listening to this will have gotten a very, very good understanding of what Ben is about, in terms of his approach to coaching. And I think I'll say this, that being this candid and like being this honest with yourself and with someone else is a daunting prospect. But, from someone who's done loads of these kind of in-depth conversations, and I made a joke about it being akin to therapy, but in some ways having that candid conversation about how you perceive your feelings relating to a specific activity or a hobby is akin to therapy. Um, He's not buying it. I just mean, if it feels daunting, don't get put off, because it's worth the engagement, right? What do you
I
want?
I I understand. I know what you're saying, and I am flattered by it, truly.
Yeah,
But that's a very
I'm using a
it's
medically
a very
loaded term.
important.
I'm using a
It's a
medically
very,
loaded
very
term, which I shouldn't use in
yeah,
a casual context. Yeah.
and
So
it's a very important thing in
yes,
its own.
true,
Yeah.
true. Coaching for card games is not akin to therapy, but there is something in that I feel that people might be. The reason I want to acknowledge it is people might feel daunted by the conversation we've just had, and worried about what that kind of conversation will reveal about themselves. And to them, I say, don't be, because if there is a labor of emotional intensity to get to where you want to be, when you get there, the payoff from this kind of discussion, working with a coach like Ben, go through it that way, is worth it in the end.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the
That's what
goal.
we try.
Yeah, but I'm fully in support of the goal. I think it works. I think a good process to engage with. Give it a try. So back to just the realities of it. I mean, how do you charge people? How do you work out stuff like that? Like, what's your what's your kind of business operations that people should expect to engage with? It's
Um,
important, you know.
yes. So first session's free. To lighten that load when you're getting to know someone, putting money on it adds all these tensions, and
Sure. Yeah.
I want to have a relaxed conversation with you where I don't feel pressured to provide monetary value, and I want you to have a relaxed conversation with me where you don't feel pressured to, it's just a
If
relaxed
we
environment.
had a chat and I didn't get any better at Fab, I want my money back. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and then as the coaching relationship continues, we'll do a session depending 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, depending on what works for you and what your style is. And that's at about $60 an hour USD.
Okay.
But obviously up for discussion depending on client.
Yeah, need and
Um,
capability.
yeah. And then yeah, take it from there. Um, Sometimes I set homework, sometimes I don't. Depends whether people want it or not. Um, yeah, and just develop the relationship from there.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you, Ben. I think this has been a really interesting episode. I mean, sitting down with coaches and different ideologies and methodologies, a really good episode. And
Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope our meeting has you know been a positive experience for you,
oh, it definitely
and you'll
has. Yeah, it definitely has. But then I'm happy to engage with you. So that was the coaching session with Ben Dodd. Obviously, reach out to him, REDODD, on any of the Fab related discords. You'll find him. Reach out to him. He said his rates were like $60 an hour, but negotiable. So if that, in terms of like his coaching style, as we said at the start, it kind of much more of a cerebral session I had with Shamir, and I'm not, just to compare them and see what happened is that Shamir obviously was hinting and implying that he could do that kind of like helping you figure out your goals and kind of well, but Ben did definitely seem to approach it in a much more cerebral way, instead of actually helping you sort of learn to play Fab, but very much like psychologically, what are your goals, what are your outcomes, where are your stress points, friction, how are you emotionally engaging with the game, and how is that impacting your enjoyment and your interaction. um so like, obviously, just as a side before we continue, like there was a lot of stuff that I brought up personally into that, and I'm obviously going to be candid when I'm doing these kind of videos. I think something that my audience has said multiple times they appreciate about my content is that I am candid, both good and bad, and those are some of the things that I struggle with in the game. I've talked about in videos is, do I engage competitively or get better at saying I'm not going to be a big one, and also just how I focus on being better mechanically in the game. lots of things that could be worked on, whether I need coaching or not. Not paying for coaching because I have too much else to do in my life, but there's a lot of interesting discussions there. So, would I review his coaching well? Yes, I would, actually. I feel like a genuine desire to engage with and empathize with the people that he is coaching is definitely there. And to me, especially during the interview, it felt like he asked like all the right questions, and I am someone who has done a lot of these kind of in-depth sort of discussions with people over the years about lots of interesting and complicated topics, and I'm not afraid from shying away from my own mental friction and emotion around the things that I do in my life. But I will say that he asked the right questions to get me thinking about the important answers. And I think that is valuable. So I think if you're struggling with how you engage emotionally and mentally with Fab, and you think that's something that someone could help you work through to make you sort of maximize your interest in the hobby, I think Ben could probably be a good person to coach. And I think as well, like if you're getting frustrated with your own goals as to where you're going to get to and how you're kind of engaged with the game, I think he could probably help as well. I do think he would be quite a good coach. And I know, we're kind of thing here where we're interviewing a lot of people on this coaching segments, and they're probably lots of them are likely to be good coaches, or they wouldn't come on the segment. You're not going to have the really, the bad coaches coming on the segment. Also, I wonder if there are bad coaches in Fab, but more it's about the different flavors and the different styles. So I think Ben could genuinely help people who are emotionally self-aware and self-engaged to elevate their interactions and experience with Fab. And I think for that reason, I could give him a fairly positive review. Recommend him to people looking for that kind of experience. So you've got my thoughts. You've obviously got the educated, demonstrative example of what that kind of analysis and discussion looks like. So let me know. Is this the sort of thing you find interesting? Which coaching style did you think was better? Any questions you have for any of these people that I've spoken to? And of course, if there are any coaches you'd like to see me bring on, if there's any other coach, if you offer Fab coaching, and you want to come on and do a similar segment, let me know. I think this has been a very interesting segment. I'd like to do more of them. I think for now, yeah, I think I'll leave it there. I think it was very interesting. Thanks you all for listening. And remember, do like and subscribe if you like my content. I think it's getting better and better every day.